Hey guys, in this video, we're going to continue our Cloudflare Tunnel videos by taking a look at adding some identity providers via Google and GitHub for authentication purposes with our Cloudflare Tunnels. But first, a quick message from today's video sponsor. This video is sponsored by Tuxedo Computers and the Tuxedo Aura 15 Gen 2. The Aura 15 Gen 2 comes with an AMD Ryzen 7 5700U. That gives you 8 cores and 16 threads while only sipping 15 watts of power. This means that the 49 watt-hour battery will get you hours of productivity while on the go. You'll also get the AMD Radeon RX Vega 8 featuring 8 GPU cores that clock up to 1900 megahertz. The Aura 15 Gen 2 supports up to 64 gigs of dual-channel DDR4 RAM. That way you can have as many Chrome tabs open as you need for your productivity. With a thickness of less than 2 centimeters and only weighing in at 1.65 kilograms, taking the Aura 15 Gen 2 will be a breeze. You'll get a 15.6-inch 1080p screen that covers 95% of the sRGB color space with a peak brightness of 300 nits. The Aura 15 Gen 2 comes loaded with I/O ports, including USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C full-feature DisplayPort 1.4, a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type-A, 2 USB 2.0 Type-A ports, and an HDMI 1.4 port that includes HDCP, 4K UHD at 30 Hz native. You'll also get a gigabit LAN port and a 2-in-1 headphone microphone jack, as well as a micro SD card slot. For more information or to configure your own Aura 15 Gen 2, check out the link in the description. So in our previous video, we took a look at buying a domain name, setting up a Cloudflare account, changing our DNS on our domain to point to that Cloudflare account, and then setting up a Cloudflare tunnel to give ourselves remote access to our self-hosted services with no port forwarding and no need for any kind of dedicated IP or DDNS service. So as I mentioned in this video, I want to expand on that just a little bit to add some third-party identity providers, again, via GitHub as well as Google, so that we can use their services to authenticate the accounts we already have available and kind of streamline our authentication process when we're trying to remotely access our self-hosted services securely. Now, when I originally had this idea, I put out a poll on my community tab over on YouTube, and several people responded that they'd like to see an Authelia integration for additional levels of integration as well. I may make that video, but that is not this video. Just know that I have seen the response to that I have seen lots of people asking for an Authelia integration with Cloudflare Tunnels. I will take a look at that, but that is not this video. So with all of that out of the way, let's take a look at what we're going to end up with at the end of this video. Okay, so here we are on my desktop. We're taking a look at my browser. Of course, we're logged into a Gmail account here. We're also logged into a GitHub account. Both of those are going to kind of play a vital role in our next step, which will be to get access to our application. So what I'm going to do is open a new tab. I'm going to put in a URL there, which is trago.dbtech.site. I'm going to hit enter, and here we go. Now I've got some options on how I can authenticate whether or not I should actually have access to this service. This, by default, will not log us into the service, but it will at least give us access to log into the service. If we don't have access to either of these, then there's not much we can do here, right? So let's just use GitHub here real quick. Let's just click that. And there we go. Just that quickly and easily, because I was already logged in to my GitHub account, it was like, oh, well, there's only one GitHub account, so that's the one we're going to use. And because of the way I'd configured my tunnels, it just gave me access because of the email account that was attached to it. So I know that was kind of a convoluted way of saying it gave me the right access. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at how to use GitHub as our identity provider to make sure that we have access to this application, let's do the same thing, but use Google instead. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to click on Google. And here we've got some different accounts that I'm logged in with. Now, only certain accounts on here have access, and I know that this one does. So that's what I'm going to click. So I'll just click right there. Give this a second. And there again is our login screen. So that's what using a third-party identity provider looks like. When you get this set up correctly, you'll be brought to a screen where it will ask you to prove that you have the right access. Again, in this video, we're going to take a look at using GitHub as well as Google. So with that said, let's jump over and get this set up. Okay, so of course, the first thing we want to do is get logged into our Cloudflare account. As you can see, I've done that. Here we've got our domain name. Let's go ahead and just take a look here. Make sure nothing in our DNS looks weird or anything. So we're going to use Trago again. I think that one is perfectly fine. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this pingvin just because we don't need it for right now. I'm just going to delete that. And then once we've got that, what we can do next is come over here to traffic, go to Cloudflare Tunnel, and then click Launch Zero Trust Dashboard. So we'll go ahead and do that. So this part is actually surprisingly easier than you might think it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the left where it says Settings. Then we're going to click on Authentication. And then we've got some different options here. What we want to take a look at is the login methods. By default, one-time PIN is kind of the default setup for that. We're not going to use it, but we're going to leave it here just so it's there, I guess. So what we're going to do is click Add New in this blue button right there. And then here are all of the different third-party identity providers that you can use. Again, we're going to take a look at GitHub as well as Google. So let's actually do GitHub first, since that's the first one we took a look at. So what we're going to do is click on GitHub. And honestly, right here, it kind of walks you through the whole process. So let's go ahead and get logged into GitHub. Okay, so here we are on our GitHub account. What we want to do is come up to the top right, click there, and go to Settings. Then we're going to go over here to Developer Options, or Developer Settings, rather. And then we want to go to OAuth Apps right here. And here we can see one I've already got up and running, the one we were using just a moment ago as kind of a proof of concept. What I need to do, though, is actually create a new OAuth app here. So we're going to click right there on the Get OAuth or New OAuth app. We're going to call this DB Tech Tuts. You can name yours whatever you need it to be for your setup. The next thing it wants is that homepage URL. Now, this is not the actual application URL. What we're looking for here is the URL of your Cloudflare team domain. If you're not sure how to find that, it's actually simple. What we're going to do is go to Settings, then we're going to go to General, and right there is our team name. We're going to come over here to our GitHub setup there. We're just going to put in that URL. Let's make sure we put in HTTPS, like so, and then we're just going to say tutorial, oops, like so, and of course you'll put in whatever your description is. That's just what I'm going to put in for my description. Now, what we want to do next is actually come over to here, and right here what we want to do is just grab this additional bit of information right there. We're going to use that in just a second, but let's copy this, right? So we've got our full team URL there, and then we want this slash cdn.-cgi /access/ callback. That's what we want to do. So it's going to be, all of this will be the same for everybody. You're just going to change your team name for both the authorized callback URL as well as the homepage URL. It's going to be your team name.cloudflareaccess.com for both of those. And of course, then the little trailing information there at the end. And then what we can do is click on Register Application. So we've got a client ID. So let's copy the client ID and go back to our GitHub stuff here. We're going to do client ID and app ID are the same thing. That's why I put it right under here under app ID. Again, our client ID is shown right here. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and put that right there in the app ID. Now for the client secret, we don't have that yet. So what we're going to do is click on Create a New Secret. And then we'll go ahead and copy this. And then we'll go ahead and just paste this in like so. And then we can click Save. In theory, we're done, but we're not. Actually, what we want to do is click this Finish Setup right here. And we want to make sure that we've authorized access for Cloudflare to access our GitHub account so that our GitHub account can access our Cloudflare account, right? So we're just going to go ahead and click on Authorize right there. And it's just that easy. Now, you may have seen on here, if you have organizational access to something else, or maybe you've got an organization set up for yourself or your development team or whatever the case is, you can actually use organizational access on there as well. Because I'm just a single user, I didn't do that, but you could absolutely give an entire organization access to your URL by using organizational access down here below. So that's kind of two different ways to handle the same thing. But again, because I'm a single user on my network, that I just chose to authorize the one user, not the organization, but you absolutely could authorize an organization instead if you wanted to. That's how easy that part is. So now that we've done that, let's come back over here. And here at this point, let's go ahead and just hit refresh. We should be good to go at this point. Oops. Let's go back to add a login method. Let's go back to settings, authentication, and right here is our GitHub, right? So what we can do is just click on test. and it says your connection works. Here's the name, here's the email address. We're good to go. So that's how we know that everything is working up to this point. So let's go ahead and do the same thing, but for a Gmail address or a Google account. So again, since we're already on this page, let's again click on Add New. And here we've got two different options. You can either use a Google Workspace. Again, that would be like an organizational thing. Like let's say you had, a Google Workspace account with 50 users, right? You could attach to that workspace and just authorize anybody in that workspace to have access to whatever applications you want them to have access to. Now, for the sake of simplicity, again, I'm just one single person here. I'm just going to use a Google account. But again, Google Workspaces would be like GitHub organizations. It's kind of that same thing. They've just got this broken out a little differently here. But I'm just going to do a single Google account here. And we're going to kind of go through the same process as we did before. So we're going to go to Google Cloud Platform Console. So I'm just going to go ahead and search for that. We're going to go ahead and do this. Just go ahead and get over here. I'm actually going to switch to a different email address. And if this is your first time using a Google Cloud Access setup, it's going to ask you some questions. You can just go ahead and agree. Make sure you agree. And then what we're going to do is actually create a new project. We're going to come up here and click on New Project. And we're just going to call this DB Tech Tuts, like so. And we'll click Create. Now, if we come up to the top, we can see that this is being created. So we're just gonna have to be patient and wait for this to do its thing like it did just there. So we can click it just like we did. And now what we should see is our project name right up here. So what we wanna do is click on the little hamburger menu, go to APIs and services, we can just click there. And then the next thing we wanna do is click on credentials. And then what we wanna do is click on OAuth consent screen. We're going to choose external right here and click on create. We're gonna give it an app name. Again, I'm gonna do DB Tech Tuts. Of course, you can use whatever you want for the app name. User support email, we're just going to select that. You can do a logo if you want. Down here at the bottom, we want to make sure that we put in an email address as well. So we're going to do that, dbtech.tuts@gmail.com. Then we'll click Save and Continue. I apologize if this is too far down, but I really can't scroll anymore, so I'm going to click Save. So for scopes, that's going to be the next screen that's automatically going to come up once you've filled out the first screen and clicked Next. What we want to do is add a scope. What we're going to use is the user info email scope. Like so, info email, just like so. We're going to check the box right there, and then we'll click update, and then we can click on save and continue. So the next thing we want to do is come over here back up here to APIs and services. We want to click on credentials. Then we want to click on create credentials and do an OAuth client ID. The application type will be web application. We can give it a name, again, DB Tech Tuts, like so. And then for the authorized JavaScript origins, we're going to click on Add URI. And for that, we're going to, again, use our team URL here. Oops, like so. And then for authorized redirect URLs, we're going to do something similar to what we did before. We're going to paste that in there, and then we're going to add that same trailing information of cdn-cgi/access/callback. We need to make sure that we add HTTPS to both of those. I screwed that up. I apologize. We're going to put that in. Once we've got that, now we can click on Create. And here is our client ID and our client secret. Now, look, a lot of you guys are going to be like, I can see your client. I can see your ID. I don't care. I'm going to delete this. It doesn't matter. Thank you for your concern about my security, but these aren't going to matter once I actually produce this video. Once I'm done recording and I know that the edit is good, I'm going to delete all of this. So thank you for your concern, but I promise none of this is going to matter by the time this video goes live. So let's first grab our client ID. We're going to click over copy right there. We're going to come back over to add Google. Our app ID is going to go there, and our client secret, which we can get right there, where it says your client secret. We're going to come down to here. Oops. Now, you don't necessarily need proof key for code exchange. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. But this just prevents cross-site scripting and that sort of thing. I'm just going to click save. Now what we want to do is click on test. Now, again, I'm logged into 3 different accounts here. I want to make sure that I select the account that I created all of this stuff under. So what I'm going to do is come over here and I'm going to select that email address. Okay, so here it says your connection works. It's got my name, it's got my email address. So what we've done is we've actually configured both GitHub and Google to be identity providers for my Cloudflare setup. So the next thing we need to do is actually configure our tunnel to work with, or our application rather, to work with these providers. So let's do that next. Okay, so we've got Trago up and running on treg.dbtech.dev. Here we can see all of that. What I want to do is actually come back over to Cloudflare. What I want to do is go to Applications. I'm going to add an application here. Again, we're going to do self-hosted. I'm going to call this Trago. The session duration, you can have it expire immediately, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, a week, 2 weeks, or a month. That is completely up to you for how long you like your authentication, your application configuration to work here. I'm just gonna do 24 hours, which is fine. I'm gonna do treg.dbtech.dev because again, that's the URL that we're using for that application. Again, no optional path here. We don't need that. We're going to uncheck this box down here. We're just going to, and we're going to uncheck this one-time PIN. We want to use Google and GitHub as our identity providers. So that's all we need to do there. Next, we can click Next. We're going to give this, we're going to just call this auth for the policy name. You can name your policies whatever you'd like, but this is just an authentication policy. So I'm going to keep it simple. Next, we've got actions of allow, block, bypass, or service auth. We're just going to leave this as allow for right now. Below that, and of course, we can change our session duration for this specific policy in here as well, but we're not going to. We're just going to leave it as it is. We're going to come down here to configure rules. So next, under configure rules, we've got a couple of options that we can use by default of emails or emails ending in. Both of those are options, but again, because I'm just using a specific email address, I'm just going to click on emails and it will be, dbtechtuts@gmail.com. Oops, like so. However, if, for instance, you had an organization that you wanted to use, somebody that, or a group of people all using the same email domain, like dbtechreviews.com or whatever, you could do at dbtechreviews.com, like so, and hit enter. And then anybody who is on that domain name for their email address would have access to that setup. But again, because I'm using my dbtechtuts@gmail.com, I'm not going to do that. But just know that you can encapsulate entire domain name or entire email domains by just doing emails that end in. So just a little thing for you there. You can, again, if you wanted to, you could say, I also want to make sure that they're in this IP address range. So they would have to be maybe on a VPN that's configured by you, as well as log in via their Gmail address. So you can be very granular about how you want to give access to these things. You could do, they have to be in America. They have to be in wherever. So there's some different things that you can do there. There's a GitHub organization that you could do as well if you wanted to do that. Enter the org name, the GitHub team name. So you've got options there as well. So you've got several different ways that you can configure the access to your application. Again, we're just going to use this one email again for the sake of demonstration here. Then I'm going to click on next. There's additional stuff down here like purpose justification, verify your identity. Right, and then we're just going to leave everything else as is. We'll click next. All of this, again, you can kind of leave this as it is. I've never needed to do anything with this. We'll click add, and then we can go ahead and open this up. And then what we want to do is come over here to authentication and make sure that Google and GitHub are both selected there. So now that we've configured our identity providers on the identity provider end, as well as in Cloudflare, let's make sure this actually works. So here we are, we're back on our treg.dbtech.dev URL. I'm gonna just go ahead and copy this, open a new tab, and there we go. Now we've got a couple of options on how we want to be able to sign in. So let's do Google and let's do dbtechtuts@gmail.com. Okay, so this is that extra little step. I am me. This is what happened when I clicked that verify thing that I shouldn't have. This was something I hadn't done before, but now we know why that's there. We're gonna click submit. Okay, so just that quickly and easily, we were able to authenticate ourselves with Google. So we entered that little I am me thing, that verify who you are kind of thing. I don't know that I would ever turn that on because all it really seems to do is if we come back over here to our Cloudflare account, go to logs and access, give this a second. There's Trago. If I open this up, purpose, justification, response, I am me, under verify your identity. So I don't necessarily think you need to turn on that verify your identity check mark thing that we did a moment ago, but that's what it does. And this is what you'll see if somebody types in, the purpose for why they're accessing this. So that's what's going on there. And of course, the process would be the same if we were to try to log in with our GitHub account. We would be brought to that screen. We would click on the GitHub option. We would verify our account if it didn't do it automatically. And then we would have access to actually log into the application. So keep in mind that doing what we've done here only verifies that we're allowed to have access to these applications, but doesn't actually log us into those applications with this setup. So I want to just make sure that we understand there is a distinction between access and authentication. We're just verifying that we have access. We're not actually logging in via the Cloudflare tunnels. So just kind of a distinction there that I wanted to make. So there's how to add a couple of different identity providers. In this case, Google and GitHub. Of course, there are others like, Facebook and LinkedIn and others that you'll see when you go over to add additional identity providers to your Cloudflare tunnels account. So again, several people have requested an Authelia integration with this, and I will take a look at that. But just know that I am aware that people want that. I will try to make that video as soon as possible, but I do have some other stuff I've got to take care of probably before we get quite that far. But hopefully you found this video helpful, at least to kind of wrap your head around how you can use third-party identity providers to make authentication a little bit easier and a little bit more streamlined for your authentication process. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor, give the video a thumbs up. It really does help quite a bit. Our last video did very, very well as a result of you guys not only finding the video interesting, but also giving it thumbs up, giving it comments. Comments are a huge indicator of being interested in the video as well, both for me and for YouTube. So thumbs up, comments, all of that is super, super appreciated. But with that said, I want to wrap this up, but I want to thank you guys for spending several minutes of your day with me today and kind of walking through this process of getting an identity provider set up on your Tunnels account. But with that said, I'm going to wrap this up. Again, thank you guys for your time, and I'll talk to you here very, very soon.